Here to talk about a new tech preview feature introduced in Ansible 2.19, which is a support for running Ansible against Windows hosts that are protected by Windows Application Control, also known as Windows Defender Application Control. Windows App Control is a feature or a security feature inside Windows that allows you to lock down the host so it can only run programs and scripts that have been explicitly defined in an allow list inside a policy. So this particular definition can either be defined by a path or content that has been assigned by a specific signature, and that enables it to sort of just allow you to restrict exactly what is run on a particular Windows host. So starting off here, I have a basic Windows virtual machine. So if I was to open up PowerShell, I can run the execution context to check the language mode, which will show that it's running in full language. And if I try and run a .NET method, which is usually restricted in constrained language, we can see that this one here runs correctly and everything is all good. In terms of Ansible, so if I wanted to run the WinPing module, we can connect to the actual host and we can see that everything is successful and things work just as normal. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to run a playbook which will set up Windows Defender Application Control, some certificates that are trusted by that particular policy, and enforce that policy on the particular host. So now that we run the WinPing module, we can see that this one here fails because the host has been protected and it will run in constrained language mode. We can also see that happening interactively. So if I was to open up PowerShell again, I run the execution context to get the language mode. We can see that it is now constrained language, and we can see that we're not able to do things restricted in this particular mode, like called .NET methods. So it's failing with the same error we see inside Ansible. So what we essentially have to do is we need to sign content used inside Ansible, so both the PowerShell modules that are inside collections, as well as the execution wrapper that Ansible uses to run modules on Windows hosts themselves. So with this new preview, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an execution environment. So I'm just going to kick this off in the background because it can take some time, and then I'll go through what this particular stage is doing. So if we open up our execution environment, we can see that we have our certificate file generated by our setup playbook. So this is trusted by the Windows Application Control policy on the particular host. And if we look at our execution environment definition, we can go through what it actually looks like. So right now, the Ansible version is pointing towards a local branch that includes the new feature that will be introduced in 2.19. When this version is officially released, this will just be like the normal Ansible version to target, and you won't need anything specific there. We can see here that it's going to be installing 4 different collections on there. So when it's installing Ansible.Windows, this is a local copy, once again, for some application control specific changes that will be part of an official release before 2.19 is out. Microsoft.AD, Microsoft.IIS, so they're just 2 other modules collections that we have for Windows. And in this case, we're also installing Community.Windows, which is community supported, so not something specific from Red Hat, but it contains a few extra modules that you can include in your EE if you want to. It's going to install a few different packages, so the standard PyWinRM, PyBSRP, as well as some other Kerberos bits, just for us to be able to actually connect to the Windows host itself. So your execution environment can include any other collections that you want. In this case here, it's just specific for Windows, so we're using a custom one. Now, the very specific changes for Windows Application Control is located a bit further down. So what we're going to be doing after we've installed all the collections, so this final step here, is that we're going to install a temporary version of PowerShell, and then we're going to use that PowerShell to sign the content. So sign both the built-in contents of the execution wrapper inside Ansible, as well as the 4 different collections from there. So this is a particular script, and then once it's done, it's just going to clear everything out for it. So if we were to check that script to see what it does, so sign content, it's essentially loading a specific function, so this new PowerShell Ansible signature. It's going to load in that particular certificate that's trusted by the policy. We're specifying the collections that we want to sign, so Ansible.builtin is Ansible itself. and then the 4 collections that we were talking about before. Right now, the Win Updates one is unsupported, so we're going to be explicitly flagging that as unsupported to provide a better error message on a failure. And then we're just running that particular commandlet inside that PowerShell file to sign the content. So once that one is done, we'll be able to see that this execution environment is created with everything else that's on there. So we'll go back to the builds. We can see that it is all finished. The verbose output here has a whole bunch of information, so it's hashing all the various plugins that we have on there. It's just sort of extra useful information. We can see here that we have an execution environment tagged under Windows App Control EE. So now that that one is done, the next step that we want to do is we want to set up our test environment. So we have signed collection content, so the Ansible windows and all the other ones. But what we're going to do is we're going to set up an environment that has playbook specific content. So in this case here, we'll have modules that are inside the playbook. Under that library directory, that's currently a signed and unsigned variant, as well as script files that we want to run. So this is just standard PowerShell scripts that are run outside of that particular, like the module ecosystem. So we have our content created, we have our inventory set up pointing to our host, and then a playbook which I'll go through that does the various tests just to demonstrate how this works. Before we run all this, we need to actually sign the content. So this will create an inline signature for our script module. So this module sign here, as well as the sort of just the standard PowerShell script running as a standalone script. So I'm going to create a copy of this. I'm going to go back to here, open up PowerShell, run that particular snippet, so that's going to sign the content, exit the PowerShell shell, and we can see if we look at our script designated as signed, we can see we have our authenticode signature at the bottom here. The unsigned one stays untouched, and then inside the modules, we can see that our module here has been signed once again, and then the unsigned ones has been unsigned. So now that's all been set up, what we can do is we're going to open up our EE that we created. You'll probably use Ansible Navigator or other tools like Ansible Controller Tower to run all this. But in this case here, we're just going to open up that container just for some interactive work. So if we do just a very basic Ansible, we'll target our Windows hosts, and then we'll run the WinPing module. So in this case here, this is just a warning around the development branch. We can ignore that. But we can see that it's able to run on that particular host and everything is working properly. If we do win, so once we've done on there, we'll kick off our playbook as well. So we'll kick off that main playbook I showed you before. That will target the Windows host and do a whole bunch of things on there. So it's going to run content that has been signed and unsigned. I'll go through this playbook as it's running in there. So if we go to our main.yaml, it's going to run a module inside WinPing, inside Ansible.windows that's signed, and that will work. We'll run modules that are signed and unsigned to show you the difference around execution modes. We'll kick off a module that's unsigned referencing a util, which we expect to fail. We also run scripts, so anything outside of that module execution, both a signed and unsigned variant. You can also still use Win PowerShell to run both signed and unsigned content. This first one here will be running that exact same script above, so script sign. That includes the signature as well as sort of inline content on there. You can also still use Win Shell and Win Command if you like. That's a bit more limited because you can't go from constrained language to full language mode. So we highly recommend Win PowerShell, but this shows you that it is still theoretically possible to use. So if we go back to our execution, we'll go back up and go through the actual steps. So we can see that the WinPing one has been successful. Sorry, let's run this with a higher verbosity so we can actually see what's going on here. So the WinPing module will work just fine. The library adjacent module that has been signed is running in full language mode. The one that is unsigned is constrained. We expect a failure because it hasn't been trusted. Scripts will run in full language if signed. If it is unsigned, it will run in constrained language. Win PowerShell, if the content that we're running is signed, will run in full language. If it is unsigned, once again, we're running in constrained language. And then finally, Win Shell will always run in constrained language, just because we can't verify the signature, and that's not how things work. So that's essentially it. You can run whatever modules that you actually sign in the content. The example with the Win updates, because we can't actually get that working right now, If we try and run that module, so win updates, it's going to explicitly fail, saying that this one here isn't trusted for that one there. So it's marked as unsafe in CLM. We need to try and come up with a new way of running this particular module, and that will come in a future update to Ansible. But for now, we just have it marked as unsupported, so it won't work right now in terms of this tech preview. If I exit this actual prompt here and go back, we can see that I'm not telling a lie. If we try and run winping again on that particular host, it will mark as not running, so Ansible won't be able to actually run in constrained language mode. That's essentially it. I thank you for looking into everything here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out on the standard support channel, so the Ansible forum, GitHub. I'm happy to walk through some of the things on there. But this new feature, this new tech preview feature, will be available in 2.19, and I hope it works with securing your Windows host, especially when using Ansible with it. Thank you.